Here we are with the next video from my Maker in Residence project series. This video is going to be pretty interesting for me. I'm excited about it. The task at hand was to utilize a tool that Dremel had sent us that we weren't familiar with. Now, there are a lot of tools they did send us that I'd used before or used something very similar to, but there were a few new ones that I was excited to get in my hands, ones that I haven't had any firsthand experience with, but knew about them. And one of those is the FortiFlex itself. So if you're not familiar with the FortiFlex, this is kind of a pretty powerful rotary tool in itself. We've got, the motor here, which is a separate piece than what maybe you're used to on something like the 8220. And then we do have a flex shaft that's attached to that with the handle here where you put your bits in the chuck at the end. The cool thing about this one here is, as you're working through it, there's also a foot pedal attachment that lets you modulate to control the RPMs of the device itself. So again, something I've never used before, but I think it looks pretty slick and should work like a champ for this next project, which is going to be carving into metal. Again, this is another material I'm not used to using, but I figured if we've got the power of the FortiFlex, might as well up the game all the way to something pretty hard, as opposed to wood or PVC. So this project's going to take place on the top of a piston. This came out of a blown motor. This is one of the good ones. This is what happens when you have too much boost running through a car. But that's another video for another day. So what are we going to be carving on top of this piston here? And that's where I enlisted the efforts of my friend Patrick McCormack, who is a pretty talented hand letterer. Had this idea floating around in my head of the quote or the words "never lift," and just utilizing that as a mantra for my life, or just the idea of just always moving forward, never giving up, keeping that momentum going. And I think the idea of never lift on top of a piston is even pretty interesting, with put the pedal to the metal and just pegging that RPMs out and just going. So he went through it and crafted up this. So the idea here is to take this from a digital or hand world and then put it onto the top of this piston, which I've got chucked up here in my clamp. Now that might be a little tougher than I realized, but my first attempt is going to be cutting this out, treating it like a stencil, and using a light coat of spray paint over the top of that. So this is just some self-etching primer, really just using it as a guide coat. I'm not looking for coverage, just looking at a way to kind of give a nice even coat over the top of that. And let me see where I'm at. Well, there's the typography cut out. Remember what it looked like. It was again, never lift. So this is the back of it. Plan of action here is to take some spray adhesive, play it across the back here, and then go forth and adhere it to the actual surface of the piston. A little tricky, but we got it on there. I was able to kind of keep some stuff adjusted here, keep the letters out of the actual top of the valve relief, so that'll kind of float down in there. Down here, I'm not sure exactly how that's all going to turn out when we actually go through the carving process, but I think it's going to be neat to see some of these letter forms kind of run off the side of the pistons. It's going to give me the opportunity to kind of see how that works over the edge there, so it'll kind of help maybe bring the viewer across when they see it. After we go through and spray paint this, which I think is going to be the better way to go, and pull it off, I'll go through and draw in those negative spaces. They were just kind of small, even over here, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose the structure of the letters by pulling those little pieces out, which I can just add back in for my guidelines. So the next step, after we've kind of peeled off that cutout stencil we made based on the hand lettering, is to chuck it up in a vise and use the FortiFlex, and then go back over, and I'm going to create the outline first with the FortiFlex, and then start to look at how I can add some texture to the surface of the piston to help add some visual interest as we go around it. Well, here we are done with the grinding portion and carving out. Again, so there's the Never Lift. That was hand lettered by my friend Patrick McCormack. Rocking out the Fortiflex, man. It's got powers to go. It never runs out of steam, that's for sure. So it really came in handy with this guy. So I got a little bit of touch up I'm going to do with maybe some paint on the actual Never Lift portion to help kind of keep it popping off of that surface. We went through and created more of a stippled effect on some areas and was able to go through and really knock down some of those corner areas that we talked about to keep some of that kind of three-dimensional aspect coming through. But it's a little tricky. You got to be careful, go slow. Any type of little, brush or nick is gonna take away some of the blackness that's happening on here. So what I'm gonna do is take a fine paintbrush and go back over the Never Lift part just to really pop it against that shiny metal. So I decided I was going to make a stand for the piston that we just got done carving. This shouldn't be too hard of a project. Again, this is just utilizing some scrap wood you probably have around your place. I had a small piece of oak, so here it is. Found the midline of that oak using a square, marked out about a inch and a quarter inch, just trying to make it symmetrical on both sides. And those are going to be the guides that I'm going to use. Taking the Dremel with a sanding wheel, just going in there and creating a dish. And that way, when we're all said and done here, this is the dirty piston, but that piston will essentially just sit down in that little groove we're going to carve, and that's going to hold it still. So that's all there is to it. I'm just going to chalk this up in the vise and start carving away with the sanding wheel, and shouldn't take too long and get it done. I didn't take more than about a minute. So now that we got it roughed in there, I'm actually taking some 220 paper. Going to wrap it around my spray adhesive can. Probably use whatever can you want here, just something with a large diameter. Just going to use that to clean up a little bit and make it a little bit more uniform through there, since I did all the other sanding with the sanding drum by hand. So clean it up pretty good. I'll just give it a light sanding over all of it. Probably just leave it natural and let the piston sit on that. Well, everything's done here. You can see where we started at with the hand lettering drawn out and scanned in, placed over a outline of the piston, one of the original pistons we started out with after we cleaned it up. And there it is, the Never Lift piston. It's all been finished up, mounted on its little stand that we created. You can see the stencils that we made over here that we glued on the front and cut out. Again, just probably lots of ways to work through that stencil process, but that way worked for me. The Fortiflex shined on here. Tons of power cut through that metal. Again, not an easy material to work with, but it really did a great job. I really liked having that foot pedal. Just being able that instant on and off control that allowed me to focus on keeping my hands steady and working through the carving itself. So there it is, guys. Never Lift. I want to say thanks to Patrick McCormack and his awesome handiwork here. This project would not have been done nearly as successful without his craft and fine attention to detail there. So again, thanks Patrick McCormack. Head out to his Instagram site and check out his website. I'll put those links in the video. See what other work he's working on when he's not helping me carve into pistons. That's all for today, folks. Thanks a lot, guys.